Marcus Apellius Macrinus, who reigned as Roman emperor from April 11, 217 to June 8, 218, was a man of North African origin with both Phoenician and Berber ancestry. Unlike his predecessors, Macrinus did not come from the Roman Senate. Instead, he began his career in Rome under Emperor Septimius Severus and later served as one of the two praetorian prefects under Caracalla. Macrinus accompanied Caracalla on a campaign against the Parthians in 216 AD, 217 AD, but eventually turned against him and orchestrated his assassination on April 8, 217 AD. Following the murder of Caracalla, Macrinus was proclaimed his successor by the army. However, his reign was short-lived, as he was defeated by the family of Caracalla in Syria and subsequently killed by troops loyal to his successor Elagabalus on June 8, 218 AD. Macrinus was born in Caesarea, the capital of the Roman province of Mauritania Caesariensis, around 164 AD. Although his ancestors did not hold significant positions, he received a good education in his youth, likely indicating that his family had enough resources to provide him with the necessary training to become a lawyer. In Rome, he began his legal career and eventually came into contact with the powerful praetorian prefect Plautianus. Plautianus appointed Macrinus as manager of his large fortune, but when Plautianus fell out of favor with Caracalla and was subsequently killed, Macrinus found himself in danger. However, the city prefect Lucius Fabius Silo vouched for him and saved his life. After starting his career as a counsel to the Fiscus, the protagonist was appointed to several high-ranking positions in the Roman Empire, including the prefecture of wagon traffic on the Via Flaminia and one of the two praetorian prefects of the Praetorian Guard. He accompanied Emperor Caracalla on his campaign against the Parthians, which ended with Caracalla's death and the rise of Macrinus to the throne. In the spring of 217 AD, Macrinus became aware of prophecies predicting his imperial status, which also came to the attention of Caracalla. A confidant of Macrinus warned him of the danger, which was likely part of an intrigue against the praetorian prefects. To avoid being arrested and executed, Macrinus conspired with 3 soldiers to assassinate Caracalla on April 8, 217 AD, in Mesopotamia. Contemporary researchers widely accept the account of Cassius Dio as the main source of information about these events. The Severan dynasty came to a temporary end with the death of Caracalla, who had no children to continue his line. In order to choose a successor, the army assembled for the war against the Parthians had to make a decision. Macrinus, who had managed to cover up his involvement in Caracalla's murder, initially had little support. The soldiers preferred Marcus Oclotinius Adventus, his fellow praetorian prefect, who had proven himself militarily despite his advanced age and illiteracy. It was only after Adventus refused imperial dignity that the soldiers finally allowed themselves to be persuaded to make Macrinus emperor on April 11. Macrinus was not part of the senatorial ranks at the time of his elevation to emperor, as he belonged to the knightly class. Although Caracalla had bestowed on him the ornamenta consularia and the title Ver Clarissimus, which were reserved for members of the senatorial class, it did not grant him membership in the Senate. His elevation to emperor set an important precedent, as membership in the Senate was no longer a necessary condition for gaining imperial dignity. Given that Caracalla was widely disliked by many senators, his death was celebrated in the Senate. As a result, his successor, who did not come from the same dynasty, was able to gain some goodwill in senatorial circles, despite not being seen as qualified for the imperial role. The new ruler worked hard to win the support of the senators, such as by committing to not impose the death penalty on them. Cassius Dio, a senator and consul, portrayed this benevolent attitude towards the senators in his historical writings, while also criticizing Macrinus for measures that violated their traditional prerogatives. Although there was a prevailing sentiment among senators that Macrinus, due to his humble origins, should not have seized power, there was a willingness to overlook this usurpation as long as he behaved modestly and met the expectations of the senatorial elite. However, Macrinus was heavily criticized for not following through on this expectation in practice. One of Macrinus's major missteps in the eyes of the Senate was his letter announcing his assumption of the imperial title without waiting for confirmation from the Senate. This was viewed as a disregard for a Senate prerogative and seen as a significant error on his part. Additionally, he acted against those he suspected of opposing his rule instead of trying to win them over, which was seen as a further misstep. There was significant backlash towards Macrinus' personnel decisions, as he appointed inexperienced individuals as provincial governors and even made Adventus, a man without the necessary qualifications or education, the prefect of the city. This move was seen as a serious provocation by the Senate, and Adventus' incompetence only further cemented their criticism. Macrinus was also criticized for not doing enough to investigate the crimes committed by Caracalla's informants, and his choice of Praetorian prefects, who had been involved in informantry, only added to the indignation. In addition to his personnel decisions, Macrinus' lack of military experience and reluctance to continue Caracalla's war of aggression against the Parthians made him unpopular among the military. He offered peace to the Parthians, but they saw this as a sign of weakness and demanded high reparations and a complete withdrawal of the Romans from Mesopotamia. The two armies clashed near Nisibis, resulting in a Roman defeat and a costly peace treaty with the Parthians. Despite this defeat, Macrinus presented himself as victorious to the Senate and was given the title Parthicus. Although Macrinus refused to adopt the title of Parthicus Maximus, he used it in practice, as seen on an African inscription and on glorified coins featuring his alleged Victoria Parthica. He also made peace with the Armenians, releasing Tiridates II's imprisoned mother and acknowledging his claim to the throne by sending him a crown, while returning Caracalla's Armenian spoils of war. Macrinus also returned the hostages that Caracalla had received from the Dacians, leading to a period of peace between them. One of the primary issues during Macrinus' reign was the constant threat of state bankruptcy due to the enormous increase in costs for military personnel under the early Severan dynasty. The increase in wages for legionnaires had tripled in 15 years, with Caracalla's increase alone causing an additional annual cost of 280 million sesterces. The spoiling of troops through extra one-time payments also added to the burden, as did the cost of Macrinus' peace treaty with the Parthians, amounting to around 200 million sesterces. This increase in military personnel costs had disastrous effects on state finances, causing monetary instability and creating exorbitant expectations among soldiers. Macrinus was aware of the dangers and attempted to cut costs without resorting to tax hikes or arbitrary confiscations. He sold imperial property and reduced the pay for new recruits to 2,400 sesterces while keeping the pay for soldiers already in service at 3,600 sesterces to avoid provoking rebellion. The author of the text attempted to implement a deflationary policy by increasing the amount of precious metal in the gold coin, called the aureus. This was a response to Caracalla's previous coin devaluation, which lowered the weight of the aureus to 1/50th pound. Additionally, the author reduced the tax burden by removing Caracalla's provisions on inheritance and estate taxes, which had been raised from 5% to 10%. However, this policy backfired when the author attempted to partially reduce the pay of the Praetorian Guard and new recruits. While the new recruits were expected to accept the reduction without protest, the old-timers who fought alongside them during the campaign against the Parthians in Syria showed solidarity and resisted the pay cut. The author's wage policy failed, and he found himself in a financially hopeless situation. Julia Domna and Julia Maesa, the mother and sister of Caracalla, respectively, decided to overthrow the author and install Maesa's grandson, Elagabalus, as emperor. A battle ensued between Elagabalus' troops and those loyal to the author, who eventually fled to Rome in disguise but was recognized and executed in Cappadocia. After his death, Elagabalus had the Senate declare a damnatio memoriae on the author, resulting in the destruction of his images and the erasure of his name on stone, metal inscriptions, and even engraved jewelry. In Egypt, Elagabalus was presented as the direct successor of Caracalla, with no mention of the author. Thanks for watching this video. If you like the video, please subscribe to our channel.